June 4th, 1943, Railroad Street, Texas. The summer air hung heavy, thick with the hum of cicadas and the faint scent of cut grass. In the distance, a train screeched as it slowed into the station. But what unfolded inside one of its cars would mark the beginning of a transformation far deeper than barbed wire and guard towers. From a small Pullman window, a German prisoner of war named Burkhardt pressed his face to the glass. His eyes widened. The countryside shimmered with light. Farmhouses beamed against the darkness, street lamps flickered in orderly rows, and factory windows blazed as if the night itself had surrendered. To a man from Germany, a land swallowed by blackout curtains, where even a lit candle could invite an air raid, the sight was unimaginable. Burkhardt later wrote in his diary, words he dared not share with guards or comrades. They told us America was weak, that its people were lazy, but no weak nation shines like this. That train carried 1,800 veterans of the Africa Corps, men who had marched under Rommel, the Desert Fox, across burning deserts. They had believed themselves invincible, yet here, in the heart of America, they were encountering something far more powerful than battlefield tactics, the raw weight of industrial might. The collapse in North Africa. Just 3 weeks earlier, under the punishing sun of Tunisia, everything had changed. On May 13th, 1943, the once feared Africa Corps and their Italian allies surrendered. It was the largest mass capitulation of German forces at that stage in the war. More than 250,000 men, seasoned veterans, not raw recruits, laid down their arms. They were stunned, not just by defeat, but by how defeat was administered. At Allied camps, the chaos they expected never came. Instead, order reigned. Officers spoke German, explained the rules of the Geneva Convention, and processed thousands of prisoners with typewriters, fingerprints, and photographs. Medical teams checked wounds and vaccinated the men. Ration slips were handed out like clockwork. It was a small glimpse into what the Germans had never been told. America thrived on systems, not slogans. While waiting for transport, the prisoners were handed meals of fresh bread, soft and white, unlike the coarse rye they had grown used to, coffee, steaming hot, meat twice daily. Some were so suspicious they refused to eat, thinking it was a trick. But the meals never stopped, the bread kept arriving, the coffee never ran dry. A sergeant whispered to his comrade, "If they feed us like this as prisoners, how do they feed their soldiers?" It was the first seed of doubt. By midsummer, the men were herded onto docks in Algeria. Looming before them were the Liberty ships, squat, boxy vessels that, to German eyes, looked crude and ungainly. But whispers from the guards spread quickly. These ships could be built in less than a week, some in just 5 days. The Germans scoffed at first. Surely that was impossible. Ships of steel took months, even years. But soon as they boarded, they realized the truth wasn't about elegance. It was about speed, efficiency, and sheer volume. The voyage across the Atlantic was not the ordeal they expected. No suffocating holds, no chains, no starvation. Instead, hammocks swung in neat rows, meals were hot, and medical stations stood ready. American sailors joked freely with the guards. Even spoiled butter was thrown overboard casually, while hungry prisoners watched it float away. For men raised on scarcity, the waste alone was stunning. One soldier later admitted, "We realized then, if they could waste so much, they must have more than they could ever use." Arrival in America, August 1943, Norfolk, Virginia. As the Liberty ships nudged into port, the prisoners surged to the rails. The sight that greeted them would haunt them for years. The docks stretched endlessly, lined with cranes that moved with mechanical precision. In a single day, Norfolk moved more cargo than Hamburg did in a week. Parking lots overflowed with hundreds of automobiles, not for the wealthy, but for dock workers. Row after row of Sherman tanks, lined up like an armored forest, their stars gleaming in the sun. Hundreds. Then, thousands. To the prisoners, it looked like a vision from a nightmare. They had faced Shermans in North Africa, smaller, weaker than their Tiger tanks. But here they saw something far more terrifying. Not one, not 10, but endless waves of them, ready to roll. A corporal muttered, almost to himself, "For every one we destroy, they will build 10 more." It was no exaggeration. By the war's end, America would produce nearly 50,000 Shermans. From Norfolk, the prisoners boarded trains bound for the interior. Again, they braced for the worst. But instead of cattle cars, they found themselves seated in padded coaches with dining cars and air conditioning. As the train rolled through Virginia and into the Carolinas, their faces pressed to the glass. They saw towns lit up even at midnight, factories roaring with second and third shifts, diners glowing in neon. In Germany, life after dark had been swallowed by silence and fear. Here, the night was alive. Factories were bigger than anything they had known. Aluminum plants stretched for miles. Synthetic rubber factories in the south produced 7 times Germany's yearly output. And in Detroit, the Willow Run plant was already rolling out one B-24 bomber every single hour. One prisoner confessed in a letter later smuggled back to Europe. "We thought their machines crude. We thought their people lazy. What I saw from that train was not laziness. It was power, power beyond imagination." When the trains finally halted, the men stepped into a world they could scarcely comprehend. Camp Hearn, Texas. One of dozens of POW camps scattered across the United States. Instead of punishment barracks, they found barracks with electric lights, hot showers, and steam heating. The camp hospital had X-ray machines and medicines Germany had long since rationed away. Meals were abundant: milk, eggs, vegetables, and meat. Christmas brought turkey dinners with pie. At one camp, prisoners were astonished to receive packages of candy and toiletries from American churches. In their own army, they had marched on empty stomachs. Here, they threw surplus bread into the trash. The greatest humiliation wasn't chains, it was kindness. Soon, prisoners were allowed to work in nearby towns. In Nebraska, they watched giant combines harvest wheat, one machine doing the work of 100 men. In Kansas, towering grain elevators poured food into barges larger than entire village harvests. In Ohio, steel plants burned hotter and longer than anything in Europe. Sparks flew, molten metal poured, and the workers seemed tireless. Prisoners returned to camp shaken. The Reich had promised them supremacy, but the evidence before their eyes was undeniable. They had been fighting a colossus. Inside the wire, something unexpected began. At first, camp newspapers brimmed with nationalism, but gradually the tone changed. Articles began discussing American farming, industry, even democracy. Prisoners lined up for English classes. They borrowed history books. They debated economics. And for the first time, many realized newspapers in America openly criticized their own leaders. No Gestapo came to silence them. One prisoner later reflected, "It wasn't speeches that changed us. It was the light that never went out, the bread that never stopped, the machines that never ended. We saw with our own eyes that the Reich had lied." By the time the war ended, more than 400,000 German prisoners had lived in American camps. Many returned home transformed, carrying stories that would spread across Europe. They spoke of a land where food was endless, where machines never stopped, and where even prisoners were treated with a dignity their own army had denied them. And so, the true captivity was not behind barbed wire. It was within the mind. Once a soldier had seen the lights of America, the lies of the Reich could never hold him again.